Another day in Spilimbergo for Levy Rozman. Unfortunately, another draw because after Levy started the Spilimbergo Open with the first round victory in just 17 moves, three draws have followed one after another against slightly lower rated opponents. So today in round 4, he was playing against Livia Jarocka, a young player from Poland, FIDE Master. And one thing that we are doing in the pre-game prep, we are trying to predict how Livia is going to treat her opening, and we made a good guess that she's going to play e4. So e4, this is what happened in the game, c6. And we are thinking that most likely Livia is going to choose between d4, d5, and the advanced variation, or knight c3, d5, and knight f3. So Olivia did play d4, d5, e5. This was part of the prep. And originally I had thought that Levy is going to play bishop f5 here. And after bishop f5, we were anticipating that Levy is going to play h4. Levy was ready for this. Also, we were considering c5. So at the last moment, Levy decided to play c5. I didn't really know this, but it's still a very serious continuation. And this continuation already was employed by Levy in the Madrid tournament in one of the most important rounds. So the idea is to play knight c6 and apply some pressure against the center. Olivia was ready for this. I think normally she had played here c3 in her own past games, which is not the ideal move. So she was expecting c5 because Levy has a very good score in these lines if he would open the database. So here she played knight f3, bishop g4, makes perfect sense, pinning the knight, and d takes on c5. So white grabs the pawn, but very often it's all about controlling the d4 square, so this position feels like some sort of a French defense. Knight c6, c3, and now you cannot take on e5. This is a very basic trap, because white is simply going to play knight e5, bishop d1, and bishop b5 check, and you just have to give away the queen and your position collapses. Of course, Levy is much better than that. He played e6. Now knight e5 in some lines might be possible. Not yet, though, because here after knight e5, queen a4 check is very unpleasant. You remove the knight, the bishop on g4 is hit, and after queen d7, there's bishop e5. Now that's why here he played this move a6. Now clearly threatening play knight e5. Also queen c7, apply pressure against the pawn on e5. And here the Polish player made the correct move. Give up the pawn immediately. After knight e2, knight e5, as you can see, there's no tricks for white anymore, because queen a4 check. Now you play queen d7. The queen on a4 cannot hit the bishop. It's protected. She cannot take the knight on e5 because the queen is hanging. And finally, queen d7, knight d7. Actually, white is experiencing some problems because of the pawn on c5. So that's why here white played bishop e2. Knight c6 was the correct move to preserve some better control of this diagonal. Queen a4. Yeah, this was the move which we are looking at the broadcast, and I think it was a mistake. Here, Olivia had to play short castle, knight f6 on b4. Have a minor advantage, but the position probably remains pretty level. With the idea play maybe knight b3, knight e4, a4, and ultimately maybe b5. So what she missed, she thought that she's not only hitting the bishop on g4, but threatening to play knight e5. After Levy responded with knight f6, here Olivia realized knight e5 doesn't work. The point is, bishop e2, knight c6, there's queen d7. And after king e2, b takes on c6, Levy simply retains the better position. And that's why here, if white doesn't play knight e5, why do you play queen a4? Because b4, a4 is the idea in this position, and the queen and the 4 is simply misplaced. Not a big mistake, we call it inaccuracy. She played h3, and here I'm not sure that Levy made the right choice. He was clearly thinking about this for quite some time, and I think that he was considering bishop h5, which maybe was the more challenging choice. Now the idea is that after g4, bishop g6, white is threatening to play knight e5. So the big idea here is actually to play h4, h5, bother the bishop. For example, if you play something passive as queen c8, h4 becomes a problem. So h5 is a big threat, try to imprison the bishop. This is a typical idea in the Scandinavian defense. And if you play h5, white takes on g6, plays g5, and then with moves like queen c2, bishop d3, asks black a lot of unpleasant questions. So this, of course, is not very good. And after knight e5, queen c7, it's very difficult to understand what to do after bishop f4. Although here, Engine, for some reason, likes it, and the move is pretty much insane. I mean, if I would have to tell you that there's a move for black and black is actually okay, the question is how many of you would have found bishop c2, which is pretty nuts. No, the idea is queen c2, knight e5, black is actually pretty much okay. He plays knight e7, bishop c5, and black gets the better position. So this bishop c2 is out of this world, so that black gets rid of the spin and collect the knight on e5. So all of this didn't happen. Maybe I should mention here that after knight e5, queen c7, rook c8, I was not so sure, but I was considering knight e7. Now after knight e7, if white takes on g6, this feels okay for black because white has problems with the king's safety. Short castle feels risky. Long castle just doesn't feel right. I mean, the entire queen side is wide open. The pawn on c5 is under attack. So imagine this, white plays b4, where the king is going to go. Yeah, so all of the sides are wide open. And now the point is after knight c6, b takes queen c6, might not be forced. I thought this was giving black a very good compensation because white has some problems with the king's safety. But okay, I mean, Levy decided to play bishop f3. Bishop f3, this is necessary because after knight f3, knight e4, white cannot protect the pawn on c5. There's just no easy way. b4 drops the pawn on c3. So that's why bishop f3 is necessary. And here Levy started to spend a lot of time. I imagine this was because he was not really familiar with this position. There's so many ways to continue. And I was wondering maybe it was the better idea to start with knight e7. But okay, bishop e7 doesn't really make anything. It's an okay move. And here I was considering maybe this was the move. Knight e7, hit the pawn, and after b4, bishop f6, hit the pawn here, or maybe even a bishop g5. Because we're looking at this move a bit later. Trade off one of the bishops, castle short, and have an okay position. So Levy decided to play shook castle, rook d1, and again he started to burn a lot of time. So he played queen c7, which maybe still okay. White played b4, and apparently here there was a very interesting opportunity for Levy to play a5, which really complicates the matters. The threat is to take on b4. White has no time to play e3 because the queen on a4 is under attack. But even if Levy saw this position is very difficult to evaluate because queen b3, you take it, okay, you have the center, but white has two bishops and two passed pawns potentially at the queen side. Very unbalanced, difficult to go here. So Levy decided to play rook d8. That's a move I quite didn't like. So I think what Levy could have improved here is think a bit longer run. And basically what Levy did here, he played h6. He played e5 to stop bishop g5 idea, threatened to trap the bishop. But as you can see, his rook on e8 is not well positioned. So had he thought about this plan earlier, he should have probably played rook d8. Rook d8, rook e8, h6, and then play e5. I think I can only come to the conclusion that at the moment Levy did not yet realize that this plan is going to be his choice. So he played rook d8. Now he played h6, now he played e5, but now the rook on e8 is misplaced. So what happened is knight f1 was played Olivia. She was also struggling with the plan. And here Levy played rook d7. g3 was a bit strange move. I thought white had to play knight g3, knight f5, and I was wondering if Levy is going to pick up this idea to rearrange the pieces on the king side. The position is very complex, and that's why Levy was burning here a lot of time. He simply could not play it faster. There's no easy way to clarify the situation because if he plays d4, this opens up the bishop here. If he plays e4, it allows bishop f4. It allows white to fix those pawns. So essentially this was playing cat and mouse. So here Levy played rook d8, kind of implying that there's going to be some push here. Bishop g2, bishop f8 was the correct move, and I think Levy was thinking about ideas like g6, bishop g7, maybe e4, d4 at some point. And before the game, I had a discussion with Levy and said, do not think too much before the game how you're going to win with black. You will have your possibilities. So just play your best chess and hope it's going to work for you. And it happened. Here, Levy made a positional mistake of 4. Why this is a mistake? She weakens her king side for no good reason. Now here Levy responded with d4, which is a very fine move, but I was wondering if d4 also was a possibility, with the idea that after c takes on d4, there's going to be e takes on d4, and the critical idea is to play h5, h4, ruin these pawns, g6, knight e7, knight f5 here. Something is wrong with white's position. There's some weaknesses. Remember f4 move. There you go. Okay, I mean, Ancient here also says some craziness after f takes on e5. And during the broadcast, we did not see this intermezzo move d3. d3, collect the pawn on e5. For example, queen f2, queen e5, the position is equal. There's that, yeah. So it's very complex position. So Levy played correctly, I believe. e4, another inaccuracy by Levy. And here I think Levy missed a very good move, h5. This could have improved his chances to win the game, because this very small move comes with the threat to play h4, and it's very difficult to answer to it because this is a major weakness. If white plays h4, this is a weakness on g4, so maybe Levy now can continue with d4, and there's some extra weaknesses he can exploit. If white allows this and plays, I don't know what she could play, something like rook c1, h4, knight h5, these are easy targets, queen on c7, knight on h5, target those pawns, and white is suffering. So, I don't know, maybe after knight e3, suddenly d4 is looking stronger, c takes knight e4, as the bishop on f2 no longer controls the d4 square, knight f3, h4. I think Levy had very good winning chances if he had picked up h5. Now instead, he was again influenced by the clock situation, having only 23 minutes versus 45, so it was completely understandable that Levy attempted to simplify the position, so he played d4. Now, apparently, this is not really that great move because here, after takes, here the position was still pretty level, and white could have kept the balance of the queen c4. The knight here is cool, but there's no progress, like maybe knight f3, takes, queen b3, white hits the pawn, everything is protected. The king is a bit in danger, but this bishop on f8 is not really participating in the game, so it's difficult to make a progress, but Levy made another inaccuracy. She played bishop e4. Now, after mass trade, d takes on c3, Levy formed a strong pawn on c3, rook d7, queen d7, hitting the pawn on h3, and also tried to play g6, bishop g7, keeping the pawn on c3 alive. So Levy understood she needs to eliminate this pawn on c3. And now here, after rook c1, this was the moment when most likely Levy had to make the hardest choice of this tournament so far. Now, the pawn on c3 is very strong, and there's nothing more natural to protect the pawn. And this is what he did. And I think he also was influenced about his clock situation because you can see he was behind the clock. Levy had simply more time, but the correct move was queen h3. Queen h3, rook c3, rook d1, queen g2, avoid the queen trade, play something like queen d7. Black is simply better. So the idea here is to play moves like g6, bishop g7, h5, maybe get knight e4, knight f5, apply pressure. The white king is feeling in some danger. There's no easy way for white to liquidate the position. And Levy would have had very good possession. Well, unfortunately, I think queen d3 was also based on miscalculation because Levy expected queen d3, rook d3, and he keeps the pawn alive. So the point here is that after bishop e1, knight e4, suddenly black wins. That's a fork threat. So if white will play king f2, c2, white is simply losing everything in one go. So instead, here what happened is Levy simply missed from afar queen e3. I also did not see this during the commentary. Now the idea is to play rook c3, and there's no knight e4. The queen on d3 is left undefended. So Levy very quickly responded here with c2, which is probably a fine move. After takes, rook c2, rook a3, rook b2, that's it. You just can't win this position because white is pushing b5. I'm sure Levy was considering to play knight a7 here to prevent this, but why again black should be better. All of black's pieces are really awkward and white has done nothing wrong. The only thing I could only come up with, maybe the best choice for Levy to continue, was to play bishop e7. And if white plays b5, takes, keep the pawn alive with knight e8. With the idea to play king f8, king e8, king d7, maybe put the rook on c3. Or even I was considering there was this idea to play rook c3 immediately, takes, rook b5, 98, so the opponent c5 is targeted, bishop goes here, king goes here, you try to somehow keep the pawn alive so that you can press opponent c5. Okay, I mean, of course, there's nothing real in this position, the position is still level, but there was still a chance to continue for a while. Well, Levy played g5, attempting to activate the bishop, but it simply leads to more trades, and now this pawn is most likely lost, so 98, white can even afford to play f6 if she wants, collect the pawn on g5, everything just trades, it's just a draw. Now Levy played rook a5, now the rook b7 draw was agreed, because after the trade here on c5, there's 2 pawns each, the king side, rook and knight each, so it's simply not enough to win the game. Overall, I think it was a good game for Levy. Good prep, so he got a very interesting position, complex position, exactly what he needed. But the problem was the time management, and he was quite not familiar with the position, so he spent a great deal of time trying to calculate some things and make some big decisions. And some of those critical moments when he could have tried to capitalize on them, like this h5, h4 idea, or queen takes on h3, 2 very small chances for him. After Levy made a couple of inaccuracies, Levy had them, he never was winning, so it's still okay, it was a good game. Couple of small bumps on the road to Grandmaster title, but still a very important lesson, and Levy is going to recover. The action will continue tomorrow on Monday with the early morning game. Tomorrow we have 2 games. They start at 9:30 Central European Summer Time with round 5 and 6, so it's going to be another tough day, and after that it's going to be 1 game at a time. Thank you once again to everybody who is watching the live broadcast, and thank you for your positive feedback, also for your likes in the video. Really appreciate that, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow, and wish best of luck to Levy.